In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Vienna, 1683. Today is September 11th, 1683. The mighty army of the Ottoman Empire, led by the savage and radical terror troops of the Dar al-Harb, surround the walled city of Vienna and begin a siege to break the golden apple of Europe and kill, enslave, or convert all of its inhabitants. The valiant citizens stand against the tyrannical army with the steadfast leadership of Count Ernst Rudiger von Stromberg, the help of the ever-living rebel Cyrus the Dead Guy, and the hopes of the faraway King Jan Sobieski III and his army of flying hussars. The Vienna 1683 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us. The Non-Standard Squad, 1944. World War II. 3 weird American soldiers are on a search and rescue mission into the oldest and darkest regions of Europe. A cursed, ever-living warrior, Cyrus the Dead Guy. An experimental warbot, Sergeant Lane McCord. An all-red axe, mysterious rogue with a demon-possessed arm, come face to face with an army of magically corrupted machine-obsessed elves, a magic hammer-wielding Norse Ubermensch, and a Nazi wizard who is a member of the ancient Dark Order of the Shining Hexagon. The Non-Standard Squad 1944 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us.
The priest says, O circle of stars, whereof our father, but the younger brother, marvel beyond imagination, soul of infinite space, before whom time is ashamed, the mind bewildered, and all the understanding dark. Not unto thee may we attain, unless thine image be love. Therefore, by seed and by root, and by stem and bud and leaf and flower and fruit, do we invoke thee. And then Babalon says, But to love me is better than all things. If under the night stars in the desert thou presently burnest mine incense before me, invoking me with a pure heart and a serpent flame therein, thou shalt come a little lie in my bosom. For one kiss wilt thou be willing to give all. But whoso give one particle of dust shall lose all in that hour. Ye shall gather goods and store of women and spices. Ye shall wear rich jewels. Ye shall exceed the nations of earth in splendor and pride, but always in the love of me. And so shall ye come to my joy. Charge you earnestly to come before me in a single robe and covered with a rich headdress. I love you. I yearn to you, pale or purple, veiled or voluptuous. I, who am all pleasure and purple and drunkenness of the innermost sense, desire you. Put on the wings and aroused and coiled splendor within you. Come unto me, to me. Sing with rapturous love songs unto me. Burn to me perfume. Drink to me, for I love you. I love you. I am the blue-lidded daughter of sunset. I am the naked brilliance of voluptuous night sky. To me. To me. This is the second invocation from the Gnostic Mass. Here we go. Yes. Hallelujah.
The Abercast. Occult.
Yeah, baby.
History. Conspiracy. Violence.
I cannot tell you how happy I am that I straightened out this goddamned soundboard. Yo, everyone, I'm your home slice, John. Welcome to the Abercast. This is just a continuation from the last podcast you listened to because I underestimated the amount of preparation I did, and I have to expand it to a whole new show. So, as you could tell, this is becoming a habit for me. If you look through the last few weeks, there's multiple parts of everything. So I'm actually falling a little bit behind in my comic book output. So, enjoy this while you can, because we're back to one show. I'm putting a strict mandate on this shit. We're going to go down to one show a week, and that's the end of it. Motherfuckers. So last episode, we talked about what turned out to be the first half of the Babalon Working. So this episode is going to be about the second series of rituals, and later we're actually going to sort of look and see if the Babalon Working was a success or not. Even some of the participants don't really see eye to eye on whether it was a success or not. But before we get going on part 2 of the Babalon Working, let's do a quick talk about supporting the show. You guys like the show. You've been listening to it for like an hour and 5 minutes and 32 seconds. That's not correct. I know it's not correct. But that's if you're listening to 57 and 58 together. So, I mean, really, just forget that I even fucking said all that stuff. But look, if you guys like the show, there's lots of great ways to support it. You can support the show by rating and reviewing it on iTunes. I would love it if you did that. I have like 2 rates and reviews hanging out there, and they're getting lonely. They're cold and lonely all by themselves. Can you please, somebody fucking help them out? You can buy some comic books. That's the best way to support the show. Because that is as they say, it's the 360 win. I get some comic books moved. People get to hear more stories. These ones are fictional, and they have pictures that go with them. And the proceeds come to me, which helps me pay for... I just had to renew StigmataStudios.com, everybody. I just had to renew it. I've been a customer of theirs. My website is going on its 17th year. Bam! That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, that shit costs a little bit of money here and there. So, I also see that you guys have been looking at the website, because as I was renewing it, the website to me is like a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's like, as I'm rolling out this project that I'm working on, I've been kind of going in like every week or every 2 weeks to kind of like update graphics, move stuff around, show more stuff that's coming up or whatever. But while I was on the website for my host, I saw my bandwidth spike. So thank you guys for checking out StigmataStudios.com. Please feel free to go there often. Like I said, I'm changing it like almost every week now. Also, another great way to support the show is just talk to your friends about it. Be like, I hear this crazy guy. I listen to the show, this crazy guy. And he talks about all kinds of weird shit. And do you know the Clintons kill people? I mean, that shit is crazy. No, listen to this. He'll tell you all about it. I know I didn't tell you all about it in the Clinton episodes, but I alluded to it. I kind of went around the edges a little bit. I don't want you to think that I'm crazy. You see, that's a lot of the show prep is like, what can I say without sounding like a lunatic? And we're actually going to talk about that there in a few minutes. Get ready. Revenge in a Saloon Called Hell is about to drop. If I had it my way, it would have dropped like 3 fucking weeks ago. but it's coming. I swear to God, guys, it's coming. Followed closely by The Brass City. Revenge of the Stone Called Hell is my love letter to Sergio Leone style spaghetti westerns. The story is, it's got a bunch of shit that I love. And I mean, well, you wrote it, right? Yeah. Well, you drew it, right? Yeah. Okay, well, you, did everything about it, right? Yeah. So, of course, it's all the shit that I love. It's it's kind of like a Western. It's got, a guy who's mad at an angel and a demon, and he figures out how to get to hell to exact revenge on them. I fucking love that shit. And like I said, followed closely by The Brass City, which is what happens when you take a World War II era warbot. It's basically think of Ward Cleaver in a walking tank. That's a good way to say it. Sergeant Lane McCord is Ward Cleaver in a walking tank, and just drop them off with some soldiers in a desert and be like, go attack these terrorists. They're held up over here in the Brass City. And this is the madness that ensues from that. So we'll look out for those two things. And we're going to get rolling. And I feel like I'm yelling. Am I yelling? Do you guys have to turn your volume down? I feel like I'm real pumped up for this. Real pumped up. Let me get a sip of the calm down juice. Okay. So this episode obviously is going to link up to part 1, which is episode 57, which hopefully you just listened to. If not, I mean, you might want to listen to it since this kind of jumps into the middle of the story. It also is going to link into episode 48. 10 short episodes ago, we talked about the Age of Aquarius and the Aeon of Horus, and how these two things I don't think are mutually exclusive, and they actually both refer to one another. So you have the hippie, the Age of Enlightenment, Aquarius, and you have the Aeon of Horus, which is the Aeon of the crowned and conquering child. So if you're interested in that, you can go back and listen to that episode and try to make out how I link these two fucking things together. And also, this one is going to link up with episode 31, which is the alchemy episode. What was it called? The magnum opus of alchemy, the transmutation of oneself. And lastly, it's going to link in towards the end there. It's going to link into episode way back, episode 16. This is right when I was kind of getting my shit together to figure out what the show was going to be. The Ebergezian Crusade, episode 16. This is where they took all the Gnostics and they fucking killed everybody and put them all into the fucking sword. So since this is part 2 to last episode, I kind of had an NFL rant in there. So let's just say I'm going to just continue that very fast right here. Hey, NFL players, linking arms is not one of the acceptable ways to observe the national anthem. You must turn to face the nearest flag. I don't know if it's nearest. I also don't know what constitutes as a flag. Like if someone's right next to you holding one of those little tiny flags, if that's the flag you're supposed to look at, I just look at the biggest one around. I've done these things for years. I used to make my living doing security for a company that worked a lot with the NFL. I'm not dropping any names. Anyhow, that's what you do. And, that's what the Army does. You stand at attention, you look at the flag, you listen to the fucking person sing the national anthem. And you know what? I got another thing about this, is every person that sings the national anthem fucking sucks it. Because they never sing it right. They always try to add their extra fucking notes in there where they don't belong. They try to put their little fucking spin on it. It does not belong there. But I'm talking about the players right now. You face the flag. You stand. You do one of three things. You stand at the position of attention. It's straight up and down, straight legs, your hands down by your sides. I mean, there's a lot more to it. I am not a drill instructor. I can't explain the fucking position of attention to you. The other thing is you stand there, you put your hand over your heart. I'm not a big fan of the hand over the heart, but if you have your hat, you take your fucking hat off. or you salute. You can keep your hat on if you salute. I think that's the rule. So, I mean, those are the things. Linking your arms in whatever, quote, unity is, unquote, isn't acceptable. It isn't acceptable. If you want to participate, okay, you're participating. These are the three things that you could do. Not stand there and hold your fucking buddy's hand like you're a big doughy fucking, a big doughy fucking human centipede. Green Bay versus the Chicago game, it was wild. It was like all these players, it was like the players versus the fans. All the players are standing there, all grabbed up on each other's fucking arms like lunatic. Like it doesn't even make any fucking sense. And like I said, a big doughy fucking human centipede, like a bunch of dopes, and all the fans are standing up chanting USA, USA, USA. That is how it's done. Anyhow, enough of all this shit. Let's get into this. The part 2 of the Babalon Working. It's going to get wild, guys. I think that's why I'm amped up, because we're about to talk about some funny shit. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's do a quick summary of where we are in this story, since we're kind of jumping into it. So we got 2 wizards. Our wizards are American rocket scientist Jack Parsons and American sci-fi author and jaunty hat enthusiast L. Ron Hubbard. They spent a little time in the Mojave Desert doing a series of magical ceremonies and rituals to summon an elemental/goddess called Babalon. In the off time, Jack banished weird lights in his mansion with the magic sword, and L. Ron Hubbard's arm fell asleep. The goal of the working was to summon Babalon, and with this expression of the feminine goddess, conceive a Moonchild, which is a sort of messianic figure for the Aeon of Horus. After the first part of their working, days and days, they found a tall, hot, red-headed weirdo named Marjorie Cameron, who the wizards were sure was Babalon, whom they had summoned. The next phase was to conceive or impregnate with sex magic Marjorie/Babalon, and she was to go ahead and to give birth to the Moonchild. If you recall, this is how the last episode ended, with me trying to figure out how to explain sex magic in any sort of way that doesn't make me sound like a lunatic. So here we go. There are many ways or theories, I guess, about sex magic. I guess it depends on what, magic system or whatever you're using. So, I mean, there's a use for it in, the poppy kind of chaos magic you hear about. Like Grant Morrison talks about or whatever the kids are into nowadays. So this is where... Oh, God. Again, here we go. Gotta focus. Daddy's focus juice. This is where this chaos magic, this is where you use your orgasm as like an egoless interface for communication or for communicating your desire to the universe. I'm not doing a whole show on sex magic or even chaos magic, but the idea of forging a sigil to represent your desire on a subconscious level, then charging it up by jerking off and staring at it. Like the moment you come, that precious egoless moment that you have, the French, that's why the French call it the little death. That precious egoless moment that you have when you're coming, and you're staring at your sigil, and in your mind's eye, you know, Grant Morrison talks about like your sigil's bursting with fire and it's exploding and all this other stuff. You're communicating your sigil through your subconscious out into the universe to affect or alter or shape your reality. You know, you're doing this magic, and you're doing it, you know, one soggy wad of tissue at a time. There's a specific sex magic that values the male ejaculate, and the manipulation of this tube or whatever that's in your taint. This sounds really weird, and I know it does. But like, look, I'm just gonna get through it, okay? So like right underneath like your ball bag, and like right between like your ball bag and your beehole. Look, I'm not a medical doctor, okay? My PhD, my doctorate is not in anatomy, but so there's this like tube or like passage like right there, or maybe it's a pressure point. I don't know what it is. And if you guys could just see me while I'm sitting here with my microphone right now. Okay, so there are these magicians who right before they come, they'll like, I don't know, like mandible claw this tube or this organ, whatever it is, in their taint. I mean, they're not like going in through the beehole. Like they're just, it's like a Vulcan nerve pinch. So you're mandible clawing your taint. And what it does is it like applies pressure on this thing, whatever is underneath there. And even though they're orgasming, they're keeping their cum inside them. Like, so they're wizards. There are these wizards who are walking around who probably haven't, you know, skeeted in like 10 years or something. I don't know what it is, but it has something to do with like, you know, what you do with that potential energy now that it's still like within your closed system. Somehow this held back cum is powerful with their magic spells or whatever. So either of these things you could do with yourself or a partner, I guess, if you want to have that awkward, can I draw my sigil on your forehead before we fuck? Or can you mandible claw my taint while you're sucking it conversations? But I feel like I'm getting a little bit too far off the topic, because we're talking about a specific working. So no, I don't think Marjorie Cameron was mandible clawing L. Ron Hubbard's taint, and I don't think Jack was drawing sigils on Cameron's forehead while he was fucking her, but I do think there was a whole lot of fucking going on. We're going to talk about that here. I'm going to try to we're going to talk about all this fucking. If you can get through the next section of this podcast without thinking of L. Ron Hubbard with that fucking captain's hat on, gangbanging Babylon with Iron Man's dad, that's what, I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. And I mean Iron Man's dad from the Captain America, the first Avengers movie, or the Peggy Carter TV show. The guy who's the preacher now. He's clearly based on Jack Parsons, if you ask me. He's got the same fucking thing going on or whatever. I mean, it could just be the guy. I don't know. But anyhow, I want to leave you on this note. I want to transition to the next portion of the podcast on this note. Iron Man's dad, Marjorie Cameron, and L. Ron Hubbard with that fucking captain's hat on, just rolling around, just going at it, just come everywhere, just fucking like Three's Company in reverse with the funny captain's hat and Mr. Furley. I'm losing it.
The night.
All right, so this is the third invocation from the vision and the voice. Glory unto the scarlet woman Babylon, and the mother of abomination that rideth upon the beast, for she has spilt the blood in every corner of the earth, and lo, she hath mingled in it the cup of her whoredom. This gets pretty heavy metal. I'm going to do that again. Glory unto the scarlet woman Babylon, the mother of abominations that rideth upon the beast, for she has spilt the blood in every corner of the earth, and lo, she hath mingled in it. She has fuck, man. Okay. Glory unto the sacred woman Babylon, the mother of abominations that rideth upon the beast, for she has spilt their blood in every corner of the earth, and lo, she hath mingled it in the cup of her whoredom. With the breath of her kisses hath she fermented it, and it hath become the wine of the Sabbath. In the holy assembly hath she poured it out for her worshippers, and she has become drunken thereon. And that face to face they beheld my Father. Thus they made worthy to partake of the mystery of his holy vessel, and the blood is the life. Beautiful art thou, O Babylon, the desirable, for thou hast given thyself to everything that liveth. In thy weakness hath subdued their strength. For in that union thou didst understand, therefore out there called understanding, O Babylon, lady of the night. O my God, in one last rapture let me attain for the union of the one with the many. For she is love, and her love is one, and she is divided thereon love to infinite loves. And each love is one and equal with the one, and therefore she is passed from the assembly and the law and the enlightenment into the anarchy of solitude and darkness forever. Thus she veil the brilliance herself. All right, so let's talk about sex magic. Remember what Crowley wrote in Magick Without Tears, which sounds like an 80s pop song. I'm going to read, no, I can't do a Crowley voice because I can't do an accent. I'm no good at accents. They all wind up sounding German. All right, so this is what Crowley wrote in Magick Without Tears. The great work is the uniting of opposites. That may mean uniting the soul with God, or uniting the macrocosm with the microcosm, the feminine principle to the masculine principle, or the ego to the non-ego. So sex magic isn't about kink. I imagine it gets kinky, but if it gets kinky, or so it's like a double-edged sword. Like, actually, in unrelated matter, Jack Parsons actually wrote an essay called The Double-Edged Sword. Freedom is the double-edged sword, where he talks about freedom, but you also have to have personal responsibility. That's the double edge of the sword. So he actually had some lucid moments here. But anyhow, so sex magic isn't about kink. It's actually not even really about sex. It's about the uniting of this masculine and feminine principles. And before any of you social justice warriors starts freaking out, I'm not talking about physical man parts and physical woman parts. You know, I don't actually think Crowley was talking about that. I think he's saying the masculine principle versus the feminine principle. So it's like masculine is like the physical. Masculine principle is like the conscious. You know, masculine principle is like dominance or violence. Feminine principle is like the subconscious. The feminine principle is like the spiritual instead of the physical. Feminine principle is like nurturing instead of violence. So, I mean, get just get a fucking away from me before we get into any of this. So any of you military, gay, or LGBTQ people out there, just cut me a fucking break, all right? This guy wrote this probably in like fucking 1914. I'm just trying to tell you what he said. So it's about uniting these opposites to become one and eventually to procreate. Again, like I said, cut me a fucking break. It's all about channeling and directing this energy. You know, it's all this massive energy and focusing to your intent and manifestation. You know, in this case, to conceive a Moonchild. It's all about potentiality. You know, which actually I think is, I mean, I'm not trying to get political or whatever, and I know it just kind of like went off on like these gay people and stuff, but potentiality is like, it's actually like the best argument against abortions, because it's like you just see like a mass, but like potentially that's like Leonardo da Vinci, potentially that's like Jack Parsons that's in there, you know, father of American rocketry, and Thelemite, and the father of the Moonchild, you know, potentially. Anyhow, I'll get back on track. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, everybody, about that. But it's all about channeling and directing these energies between, you know, this male and female, like, principle, you know, and, like, channeling it. Like, you know, nowadays sex is like cheap, you know, and it's like, well, everybody does it, but like, all right, hold on. Okay, so it's all about channeling and directing this energy. You know, the whole, like, you complete me, or, you know, you complement each other so well. Like, the reason people say that shit is because it's true. It's like a fucking plug, you know? It's like if you have a plug outlet with electricity coming through it, and you plug something into it, and the electricity flows, like, that's it. And again, this is not about gay sex or gay people or whatever. I'm trying to explain, you know, this male and female principle. So nowadays, fucking is just fucking. You know, it's cheap. But like in the bedroom of a practicing sex wizard, it's like every time you go in there, you know, it's like a fucking it's like a brand new Led Zeppelin album. You know, it's just like, it's like awesome and long, and everything seems to mean something. So, okay, so Parsons and Hubbard and Marjorie. I don't know why I did the two last names and then I called her Marjorie. So Parsons, Hubbard, and Cameron are just focusing and channeling all of this potential, all of this energy, this masculine and feminine energy, all of this energy holding and sculpting a vast nexus of power to create the Moonchild, the Messiah of the Aeon of Horus. I mean, but it turns out that Parsons and Hubbard were just running a train on Marjorie for like days. The amount of filth and grossness that I just get tattooed, like the image in my head of like Iron Man's dad, you know, this Marjorie Cameron, which I mean, we'll get into like a little bit of her life story in a little bit. And L. Ron Hubbard with that goddamn captain's hat, you know, it fucking kills me. It's so gross. It's like, if you're going to get involved in Babalon Working, if you're going to do a Babalon Working, especially when you get to the second half of the series, you're going to need a lot of wet wipes. You're going to need wet wipes, all right? You know what else you're going to need? You're going to need bottled water. You know what else you're going to need? You're probably going to need a safe word, because L. Ron Hubbard is a fucking weird fucking guy. That's what I'm saying. All right, so I think I forgot to mention the reading that I've been doing all comes from the Book of Babylon, if you haven't figured that out. It's all coming from the Book of Babylon until notified, because we are going to flip into this other book before the end of the show here to the Book of the Antichrist. We're going to flip there in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read. This is, again, it's part of the Book of Babylon. It's called... This is a invoking poem written by Jack Parsons called The Birth of Babylon. What is the tumult among the stars that have shone so still till now? What are the furrows of pain and wrath of the immortal brow? Why is the face of God turned gray and his angels all grown white? What is the terrible ruby star that burns down the crimson night? What is the beauty that flames so bright athwart the awful dawn? She has taken flesh, she has come to judge the thrones ye rule upon. Quail, ye kings, for the end is come, the birth of Babylon. I have walked 3 dreadful nights away in halls beyond despair. I have given marrow and tears and sweat and blood to make her fair. I have lain, my love, and smashed my heart and filled her cup with blood. The blood might flow from the loins of woe to the cup of brotherhood. The cities reel and shout of steel where the sword of war is drawn. Sing, ye saints, for the day is come. It's the birth of Babylon. The God has called for his judgment book and seen his name therein. The grace of God, the guilt of God have spelt it out as sin. His bloody priests have clutched his robes and stained his linen gown, and his victims sworn from his broken hell to drag his kingdom down. O popes and kings and the little gods are sick and sad and wane to see the crimson star that burst like blood upon the dawn. While trumpets sound and stars rejoice at the birth of Babylon, Babylon is too beautiful for the sight of mortal eyes. She has hidden her loveliness away in lonely midnight skies. She has clothed her beauty in robes of sin and pledged her heart to swine. And her loving and giving all she has brewed for saints immortal wine. But now the darkness is riven through, and the robes of sin are gone, and naked she stands as a terrible blade, and a flame of splendid song. Naked and radiant mortal flesh at the birth of Babylon. She has come newborn as a mortal maid, forgetting her high estate. She has opened her arms to pain and death, and dared the doom of fate. The death and hell are at her back, and her eyes are bright with life. The heart is high, and her sword is strong to meet the deadly strife. Her voice is sure in the judgment trump to crack the house of wrong. Through the walls are high and stone is hard. The rule of hell was long. The gates shall fall and iron breaks at the birth of Babylon. Her mouth is red and her breasts are fair, and her loins are full of fire. And her lust is strong as a man is strong in the heat of her desire. And her whoredom is holy as virtue is foul beneath the holy sky. And her kisses will wanton the world away in passion that shall not die. Ye shall laugh and love and follow her dance when the wrath of God is gone. But dream no more of hell and hate in the birth of Babylon. So the Moonchild was never conceived, or at least a physical one. Hubbard leaves the picture under sinister pretenses. Parsons and Marjorie Cameron end up getting married. And in these later years, Jack writes a book called The Book of the Antichrist. I was about to say The Book of the Anarchist, like the Anarchist cookbook, and I'm like, I got one of those. And he goes on this thing called the Black Pilgrimage. Here, hold on. He writes about it in the Book of the Antichrist. And on the 31st of October, 1948, Babylon called on me, and I began the last work. And it was the work of the wand, and I worked for 17 days until Babylon called me in a dream and instructed me on an astral working. And then I reconstructed the temple and began the black pilgrimage as she instructed. And I went to the sunset. I went into the sunset with her sign, and into the night, past accursed and desolate places and cyclopean ruins. And I came at last to the city of Chorazin. And there a great tower of black basalt was raised, and part of a castle whose further battlements reeled over the gulf of stars, and upon the tower was his sign. So I'm going to stop reading right there, but I'm going to just point out that seems heavily inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, we got this thing. He's moving into the sunset with her sign in the cyclopean ruins, and he came at last to the city of Chorazin, and there was a great tower of black basalt was raised, and part of the castles whose further battlements reeled over the gulf of stars, and upon the towers was this sign. So Jack was, I mean, early on he was super influenced by Crowley, but this passage here in this book of the Antichrist seems like literally that, I mean, H.P. Lovecraft would have been like way more purpler with the prose. He would have had like way more, like there was a gibbous moon on the horizon. Like he would have said a lot more stuff. He probably would have like also worked in some vaguely or outrightly racist stuff about poor people and that are fish hybrids. But I mean, it kind of is like right out of Lovecraft's Dagon. Or Dagon, sorry, about the cyclopean ruins, and instead of a great tower of basalt, there was a great black fish god that the tides had strewn up, which is actually just like a proto version of the Cthulhu story. It's basically the same story over and over again. So this is just to show that Jack was not in a vacuum. Jack was not in a vacuum, and Hubbard was not either. We're actually going to explore this a little bit later on. But I just wanted to read this thing about the Black Pilgrimage because I find it really interesting. I'm going to save the rest of this passage for later because that's what we're going to actually wind up getting into. So they got married. In these later years, Jack writes a book called the Book of the Antichrist and goes on the Black Pilgrimage. As far as Parsons, the Book of the Antichrist, and Hubbard's Emperor Xenu, for that matter, this guy named Paul Weston, he gives us a brilliant speech. You can find it on YouTube. This brilliant talk or lecture, whatever you guys call it, whatever it's called. Paul Weston points out that in 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library was found, and I have the translated Nag Hammadi Library in my library. But by this time, Jack and Elrond's careers, the translation, it took them years to translate this thing. So with the Nag Hammadi, I keep putting this extra closure in there. The Nag Hammadi library is what happened is this fucking cave somewhere, this shepherd kid found a jar full of scrolls, and he digs it out and he drags it home to his house. And what they start doing is they start taking the scrolls out and burning them to keep warm at night until some guy finds them and he's like, whoa, what are you doing? I'll give you like $3 and a fucking mule for this thing, or whatever it was. It wasn't $3 and a mule. I'm just trying to be funny to keep this fucking thing going, but they wind up taking it, and it was like the collected wisdom of the Gnostic religion. I'm just going to call it that. And this, as they started to translate the Nag Hammadi text, it started exposing the world to Gnosticism. Now, we knew a little bit before that. We knew the opinions of its critics and detractors, and all of its texts had been burned, and every Gnostic the Catholic Church could find, they put into the sword, and the whole library of Alexandria was burned to the ground. But both of these guys, Hubbard and Parsons, were obviously adapting and installing these Gnostic ideas to their shit. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about Gnosis in later episodes. Probably going to talk a lot about the Nag Hammadi text. But shit like in Hubbard's world, the evil psychotic demiurge and this reincarnation, the obsession of Scientologists to attaining self-knowledge and reaching what I would call Gnostic enlightenment, or what Scientological terms would be called, the state of being clear. And in Jack Parsons' book of the Antichrist, he starts relating to this Gnostic superhero, Simon Magus, who was the first Antichrist figure, and there's a real watered down version of him actually in the New Testament, the Septuagint. But here, let me read this from the book of the Antichrist. Hold on, I need to... And one, heavily robed and veiled, showed me the sign, and told me to look. And behold, I saw a flash below me, 4 past lives, within I had failed in my object, and beheld the life of Simon Magus, preaching the whore Helena and as the Sophia. And I saw that my failure was in hubris and the pride of the spirit, and I saw that my life as Giles de Retz, whereas I attempted to raise Jeanne d'Arc to be queen of the witchcraft, and failed through her stupidity and again my pride. And I saw myself as Francis Hepburn, Earl both, well manipulating Giles Duncan, that was unworthy instrument, and again as Count Coleg Strago, failing because I failed to comprehend the nature of women in my Sepharina. And I was shown myself as a boy of 13 in this life, invoking Satan and showing cowardice as he appeared. And I was asked, will you fail again? And I replied, I will not fail, for I had given all my blood to Babylon. And it was not I that spoke. And thereafter I was taken within and saluted the prince of that place. And therefore things were done to me which I may not write. And they told me, it is not certain that you will survive, but if you survive, you will attain your true will and manifest the Antichrist. And thereafter I returned and swore the oath of the abyss, having only the choice between madness, suicide, and that oath. But the oath in no wise, ameliorated that terror. And I continued in the madness and horror of the abyss for a season, but of this no more. But having passed the ordeal of 40 days, I took the oath of Magister Templi, and even the oath of the Antichrist before Freighter 132, the unknown god. And thus was I, Antichrist, loosed to the world, and to this I am pledged. The work of the beast 666 shall be fulfilled, and the way of the coming of Babylon be made open. I shall not cease or rest until things are accomplished, and to this end I have issued my manifesto. All right, so you see that Jack is incorporating... Jack Parsons is incorporating the idea of... He's also incorporating the idea of reincarnation, because he's actually talking about going back and back and back and back in his time, and he kind of finds himself as the first Antichrist figure, as this Simon Magus, and as this goes on, when I think we're going to actually wind up reading the Manifesto of the Antichrist, but as it goes on, when we read the Manifesto of the Antichrist, it kind of sounds like this awesome poem from the Nag Hammadi text called the Thunder Perfect Mind, where the mind of the one true God is talking about how he or she is everything. It's actually written from a female perspective, which is super interesting. And we're going to wind up doing a whole thing about it eventually. So, I mean, just hold on. Don't just pump the brakes if you want to go on about it yourself. But I can't. I mean, we're already like 53 fucking minutes into this thing. So I can't get into the Thunder Perfect Mind right now because I'm super excited about doing it. Okay, so yeah, so that's where we are. All right, so it starts to sound like the Thunder Perfect Mind as we go, and maybe so I'll read some of that once we get back. We're gonna get back right now. The Manifesto of the Antichrist. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I, Balerion, Antichrist, in the year 1949, of the rule of the Black Brotherhood called Christianity, do make my manifesto to all men. And I, the Antichrist, come among you, saying, an end to the pretense and lying hypocrisy of Christianity, an end to the servile virtues and superstitious restrictions, an end to the slave morality, an end to putitry and the shame and guilt and sin, for these are of the only evil the son that is fear. An end to all authority that is based on courage and manhood, the authority of lying priests, conniving judges, blackmailing police, and an end to the servile flattery and cajolery of mods and chronications, the mediocrities and the ascension of dolts. An end to restrictions and inhibitions, for I, the Antichrist, have come among you, preaching the word of the beast 666, which is, there is no law beyond do what thou wilt. I, Balerion, Antichrist, do lift up my voice in prophecy and say, I shall, all men of the law of the beast 666, in his law I shall conquer the world. Within 7 years of this time, Babylon, the scarlet woman, Hilarion, will manifest among ye, and bring this my work to fruition. The end is conception, compulsion, regiment, and the tyranny of false laws. And within 9 years, a nation shall accept the law of the beast, 666, in my name. And that nation will be the first nation of earth. and all who accept me, the Antichrist, and the law of the beast, 666, shall be accursed, and their joy will be 1,000-fold greater than the false joys of these false saints. And in my name, Balerion, shall they work miracles and confound our enemies, and none shall stand before us. Therefore I, the Antichrist, call upon the chosen and elect, and upon all men come forth now in the name of liberty, that we may end forever tyranny of the Black Brotherhood. Witness my hand and seal on this, I guess, 29th day of September 2017, this year of Babylon 4066. Now that math is all messed up. Whatever. Anyhow, skip past this. Love is the law. Love under will. Balerion. Antichrist. So after Parsons exploded himself in his home in 1952, Marjorie Cameron established a multi-race sex cult that went on to try to breed a race of mixed moon children who would worship Horus. Also, after that, she was an artist. She was a poet. She was an actor. She actually starred in Kenneth Anger's inauguration of the Pleasure Dome, which is available on YouTube for free. I suggest all of you drop what you're doing and Google search or YouTube search this and find inauguration of the Pleasure Dome. It's so wild. However, you can actually visualize and see a person that was involved in this Babalon Working. She was the major part. It wasn't going to be Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard fucking each other. They needed Babylon, and she was there. They summoned her to do this. It's actually going to get a lot weirder here in a second. So, Kenneth Anger actually is a Luciferian, is a Satanist, and he was an acolyte of Crowley. Like, he actually wound up on a side of, like, part Crowley, part LaVey Satanism. However, it's important for me to note personally that my Halloween ritual, which is coming up pretty soon, Halloween's right around the corner, everybody. Get your fucking jack-o'-lanterns ready to go. My thing, when I'm passing out candy to the little kids in my neighborhood, I open my door, I have a giant TV on the wall, and I punch up YouTube, and I punch up Kenneth Anger's Lucifer Rising, and I pump that out to every little kid that stands on my porch. I don't know if that's wrong or not, and it's not like gross or scary. It's just weird. It's a fucking weird fucking movie. It's also available on YouTube if you want to check out Kenneth Anger's Lucifer Rising, and I suggest you put that on when little kids are trick-or-treating at your house, because it's weird. So here you go. Kenneth Anger, Lucifer Rising, Halloween. That's what you got to do. However, if you want to get a glimpse of this lady, if you want to get a glimpse of Babylon, if you want to get a glimpse of Marjorie Cameron, this is a good place to do it. She played as soon as you see her on the screen, you'll know exactly who the fuck she is. She was an artist. She's a poet. She actually has her art's actually pretty awesome. And I'm saying that as from like an art snob sort of thing. She actually, at one point in time, she had a phase where she was drawing visions from her peyote trips, which is cool. But yeah, so there you go. You can Google search her. You can check her out. I'm here. I'll take Dana to her apartment to check her out. Check out the apartment. Kenneth Anger, the inauguration of the Pleasure Dome. You're welcome. Also, Kenneth Anger, Lucifer Rising. Halloween's right around the corner. Okay, so she lived until the 90s. She actually died in 95. And she ultimately thought that Babalon Working was a success. She came to realize that the Babalon Working birthed a psychic field, or this spiritual force that the enlightened young people of the 60s embodied, ushering in the Aeon of Horus. The Aeon of the Crowned and Conquering Child. Michael W. Ford's book, The Wisdom of, Esophorus, The Luciferian Philosophy, says, in fact, many of Parsons' ideals and that he actively engaged in become cornerstones of hippie subculture in the 60s. Now we're going to get into this in a second. Drugs, free love, communal living, exploration of esoteric and spiritual practices. The hippie movement eventually morphed into the New Age movement, which was named after the New Age of Aquarius, as we talked about in episode 48. We keep going back to that one. That's a great episode. We keep going back to it. It's like a great building block for all this shit that we're talking about. So the hippie movement eventually morphed into the New Age movement, which was named after the Age of Aquarius, the oncoming Age of Aquarius, when instead they should have, in my opinion, became the New Aeon movement, being centered around the Aeon of Horus instead, as they were much more geared towards Horus than Aquarius, I think, in my opinion. I look at all the popular music from the 60s, and even the Beatles had Crowley, the prophet of the Aeon of Horus, on an album cover. He was on Sgt. Pepper's. Actually, you know what? This show links into the Paul is Dead episode 2. So there you go. I should go back and re-edit that. Nope, not going to do it. So am I saying that 3 weirdos magically fucking the hell out of each other gave birth to an alien psychic field that possessed a generation of American kids in the 60s that promoted sex, drugs, and rock and roll? Yeah, I think that I am saying that. I think that is exactly what I'm saying. But don't forget to support the show. You can support the show by rating and reviewing it on iTunes. You can buy some comic books, and you can just tell some friends about it. I'm honored that you guys spend the time with me every week, and it buzzes me so much to see like my numbers and stuff. So thank you guys very much. I am super appreciative. Don't forget to rate and review the show. Don't forget to share it with your friends, or don't forget to buy some comic books if you got a couple extra. The ones on Indie Planet are literally just like $3. So come on, and there's good stuff coming up. Visit stigmatastudios.com. Like I embarrassingly mentioned earlier, I'm changing it every week or two to keep you guys abreast of the new project that's rolling out.
The Ages begins with the shocking story of Cain and Abel and the journey of violence and revenge spanning thousands of years, following Cain through his cursed life from an ancient invasion of malicious angels to the American Revolutionary War. A masterful, compelling journey through time, The Ages delves deep into arcane knowledge, myth, and legend. The art is stunning, and the story takes you on a journey where mortals, immortals, angels, and demons are all forced to deal with the folly that is God's creation. It's a beautifully dark and gritty ride through history. This 4-part story follows the astrological procession of the ages and how each 2,500-year age parallels major changes in the development of Earth's inhabitants. Cain's blasphemous struggle with the divine and sacred tyrant God will create and crumble empires, shape history, and cause a cosmic cataclysm.
yeah, so that's it. And this evening, we're going to be played out by... I think we're going to do... I feel like I need to do Soda Jerk. I need to do a little bit of Cowpunk. So here we go. This is going to be Soda Jerk, and it's going to be Fuck and Fight off the Soda Jerk 2 album. Here we go. All right, we've talked about too much fucking. We've talked about too much fucking. We talked about too much cum, and we talked about too much struggle to play this episode out with anything other than Soda Jerk 2. It's Soda Jerk. It's on the album Soda Jerk 2, and the song is called Fucking Fight. So here we go. Thank you guys for listening. Thank everybody for listening. Please support the show. Here, this is it. We're going. We're fucking going right now. We're gonna fucking do it. Here we go. I just need some whiskey. That's the only thing missing. I just need full fucking whiskey.
Tightened up her grip, and she made me sick that night. I knew that the whiskey would take up my life. Well, I stand 2 inches below 5'9", and every guy here wants to take me alive. So I'll take a shot of whiskey and punch out their lights. The whiskey, it make me wanna fucking fight. I fucking fight. Fuck and fight. The whiskey, it make me wanna fucking fight. Well, every woman here up in this place, not even the crack of dawn is safe. So I'll take a shot of whiskey and say goodnight. The whiskey, it make me wanna fucking fight. I fucking fight. Fucking fight. The whiskey, it make me wanna fucking fight. The whiskey, it make me wanna fucking fight. The whiskey, it make me wanna fucking fight.
Soda Jerk 2, Fucking Fight. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm glad I was able to get over this mountain of research with you guys about the Babalon Working. I'm John. This is the Ebercast, StigmataStudios.com. Buy some goddamn comic books and let's get on. Let's get it on. Let's fucking get it on. Good night.